Okay, so knitting a swatch in the round. Now you're not, I mean, if you want to take the time to literally cast 60 stitches on, join, and do your 4 inches in the round, it's wasting time and it's wasting yarn. Another way you can do it is a mock tube of knitting in the round. So which I've knit a couple rows, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide, because I've already knit. I'm going to slide my yarn on my needles, okay, to the other end of my circulars, because I'm knitting. This is mocking knitting in the round, okay. Then I'm going to take my working yarn right here. I'm going to take my working yarn, okay, and I'm just going to do it loosely, and I'm just going to kind of hold it there in my finger, and I'm going to knit my first stitch, okay. You don't want to do this too tight, because like I said, you're mocking knitting in the round, okay. And then you're just going to knit across. Because we're doing stockinette, I have a couple garter ridges there just for an edge, help with the curling. And I do that a lot when I'm doing my swatches. But when I go to measure my gauge swatch in stockinette, I start at my stockinette position, at my stockinette row. Okay, the garter is just to help with the curling. And you would just continue knitting, and when you get to the end of the row, which I'm almost there, okay, because my pattern calls for a gauge swatch in stockinette stitch. It'll tell you, sometimes it'll tell you in a pattern, okay. So I'm going to take my yarn, and again, I'm going to slide it back to the beginning, to my other needle, whoops, to my other needle, okay. My working yarn's over here on the left side. Pull some out here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosely just hold it in the back of my hand, okay. Hold it in the back of my hand like this. I'm going to take my needle, and I'm going to knit across again. Again, it's important that you don't put too much tension on the yarn you're holding in the back, because that's representing literally your tube. And I'm going to knit a couple stitches, and then I'll let the yarn go that I was holding in the back, and I will just knit across. Okay, knit across. Because my pattern's calling for stockinette. We'll do 3 or 4 rounds of this together, and then we'll see what it looks like on the back. Okay, so I'm coming down here to my last half dozen stitches or so. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Okay, I have finished another row. So we're going to slide our yarn back to the slide across to the back to the needle, which, you know, your working yarn's still over here on the left side. But again, we're going to knit back across. So I'm going to take the yarn like this, and I'm just going to wrap it around on top of my hand. Whoops. Wrap it on top of my hand like that, okay? And I just secure it with my index finger and my middle finger, and then I'm going to knit back across, okay? Now after I do a couple stitches, I drop my yarn from my hand, and I'm going to knit back across. Once we finish this, I'm going to show you what we have on the back. And this is how you do a gauge swatch knitted gauge swatch for mocking. It's mocking in the round, a tube. Is it exact? No, but it's pretty close, and it's an accepted way, even if you're a pattern tester for somebody doing your gauge swatch. I've done gauge swatches like this before when I was doing a test pattern for somebody, and it says because always when I'm testing, I always had to do a gauge swatch. Okay, a couple more stitches, and I'm going to show you what the back of our work looks like. Okay, last stitch. Okay, now my yarn's still here. I haven't slid it back yet. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it around, and as you can see in the back, you've got the strands of yarn that you held, okay? And again, I'd hold this like this, and it literally would go back and forth. So when you look at it, it will look like a tube, like you're knitting in the round, okay? That's why you don't want to put it too tight. Hold it loose, but you just keep doing that. You knit across, then you slide it on your circulars. This isn't something I would do on straight needles. And as you can see, my stockinette's coming up. And then I would knit back across while holding the yarn on the back of my hand, nice and loose, okay? Nice and loose. And then I knit back across. We'll do this one more time, except I'm hooked on the end of my needle. And that is how you do a stockinette gauge swatch in the round. You're simulating actually knitting in the round by taking your yarn across the back, not too tight, and as you do your 4-inch gauge swatch, now I always do usually 6 inches. I'll do an inch, you know, on extra on either end. And when I go to measure my gauge swatch, it gives me something, a little something to, you know, let me finish this here, and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, I finished this here. Okay, and we finished this here. So there's my gauge swatch, what it's starting to look like. I'll slide it back here, just so I can lay it down. Okay, you can see the stockinette forming. But if I turn it over, I've got the yarn that I was holding in my back, and what that's doing is that's representing the other half of the circle of knitting in the round. Okay? So I'll hold on one moment. I'll get a swatch roller. Okay, now these are just a few of the gauge swatch things to measure gauge swatch. This one here, I'm going to take a gauge swatch I have from another thing so you can see how I use it. I had to do a gauge swatch in this pattern. This was for my Meanwhile Maine sweater. Okay, so what you would do is you would find, put this down a little bit. Okay, you find your row, and you place this on the edge. And what you would do, this is for a 2-inch gauge swatch, and you would count how many columns you have and how many stitches across to find out. And it would tell you in your gauge swatch, it would say, you know, 10 stitches for 2 inches or 10 stitches for 4 inches, whatever the gauge swatch would be reading, and that's how you would do it. My favorite one to use is this one here, and it's by Aker Works, A-K-E-R Works, and this is my favorite gauge swatch to use because it stays put. And if you look, let me see if I can get it right here. Okay, across here is 4 inches. Okay, so I would literally take my gauge swatch and lay it across for 4 inches and count how many stitches I have across, and then I would count how many stitches I have in a row. And it tells you specifically how many stitches per inch or per 4 inches and how many columns. Columns are this way, and then your rows are going across. So, but there's all kinds of different ones. This one here, this one here is a Susan Bates. It's ancient, and you can. I have other ones that are more complicated and tell you how many knit stitches. It actually gives you how many knit stitches you'd have, but that's what I wanted you to see. Whoops. Oh, sorry about that. Went out of focus for a minute. So that's how you do a gauge swatch in the round. We'll do it one more time, okay? So I've slid my yarn back to the other needle. So I'm going to take my working yarn and just lay it across the back of my hand, okay, and secure it with these two fingers. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to knit a couple stitches, and then I'll let go of the yarn in the back. I'll let it go, and I just knit across, and you just keep repeating this until, and you don't have to, you don't have to do exactly 4 inches. You can go 6, 8 inches. I always like to give myself a few inches bigger than the gauge swatch asks for. It gives me something to work with. Now, your tension changes between a knit and a purl, okay? And since you're going to be knitting in the round, all you're going to have is knit stitches. You're not going to be purling. So this gives you a more accurate gauge on what your tension is going to be, okay? Again, my tension changes day to day. You know, if I'm in a, depending on my mood, depending on my hands, you know. And then I just come across like I showed, and we'll flip it over, and I would finish this row. Or my mock in the round, okay? I would slide my yarn to the other end of my circulars, okay? And I just finished another round. So I hope this helps explain a little bit about gauge swatching in the round for knitting using this method without excuse me, actually having to go and cast on this many stitches and actually knit it in the round. Because if you were gauge swatching this actually in the round, you would double your stitches that you were using to get an accurate 4x4 gauge swatch. Okay, this way here it saves you some yarn and it saves you some time. Please let me know in the comments if this was helpful to you, if there's anything I need to clarify, and I will see you in the next tutorial. And remember, I hope wherever you're at, you're staying safe, you're healthy, you're happy, doing what it is that makes you happy. And remember, hug, smiles, and happiness. Pass it on. Make the world a better place each and every day. Be the light in somebody's dark day. Here's bye for now from Deer Island. I'll see you in the next video or the next Sunday Live. Love you all, and thank you so much for watching. And I hope this is clear on how I explained it.